There's no denying now how big a role Monolith Soft plays in not only releasing fantastic and original content for Nintendo platforms, but also how integral the company has become in many of Nintendo's biggest releases. I mean, we know the obvious games they've worked directly on, which alone have pushed their name into the gaming limelight. Games like Xenoblade Chronicles, Xenoblade Chronicles X, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, along with Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Toner, Golden Country, which I still need to buy, by the way, and even the Project X Zone series on a 3DS along with Namco and Sega. The Xenoblade series alone is a staggering achievement for Monolith Soft, and each game has shown their technical prowess when it comes to Nintendo hardware, sometimes reminding me of the good old days with the likes of Factor 5 and Rareware, especially in regards to Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and Xenoblade Chronicles X for what they've done on their platforms. But where Monolith Soft have really impressed and in many ways have become somewhat integral to Nintendo in the HD era is with helping Nintendo create many of their biggest IPs, some of which have been so large that it's even a first from Nintendo in terms of scale in world and development size. This from Retro Studios was first prevalent with the release of Metroid Prime on the GameCube, and a company showing incredible technical skills when it came to not only developing stunning looking 3D titles, but also creating stunning looking Nintendo titles, arguably showing off more technical skill than the big N themselves. But that's neither here nor there, because as we know, with many of Nintendo's studios, the big N is never too far away and their influence is always felt. Or if you're an old school Retro Studios fan like me, you'll remember getting excited about Retro Studios' other potential games, based off how they looked and how exciting the Nintendo GameCube was coming from the graphical point of view, as well as coming off for me what is still the best console ever made, which is the Nintendo 64. But yeah, one game that always stuck in my head was Raven Blade, which seemed to mix a medieval fantasy-like setting with some martial arts and swordplay. That game looked incredible to me, and immediately Retro Studios was one of the most excited studios to enter the house of the Big N. And this is where Retro Studios stayed for a long time, because from Metroid Prime, easily one of the best games ever made, certainly in my top 5, they released for me hit after hit after hit. And contrary to popular belief, Retro Studios' output was pretty steady, and I was happy to wait for each of their games, because every time they dropped one, it was a piece of gaming greatness. We even discovered that Retro Studios play support roles as well, most notably with helping to develop parts of Mario Kart 7 on the Nintendo 3DS. But as we know, after the release of the utterly sublime and arguably one of, if not the best platformers ever, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Retro Studios started to go quiet, perhaps too quiet, and their influence and excitement started to wane on once long-time fans, and it wasn't until the strange development of Metroid Prime 4 and Retro Studios being brought in as a new developer for it that we really had any idea what they were doing, and we still don't really know what they've been doing since Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. But it's during these eras, probably around 2010, after both the release of Donkey Kong Country Returns from Retro Studios and Xenoblade Chronicles from Monolith Soft, that things started to change in terms of influence in the world of Nintendo, I feel. Of course, there will be some that will say that Monolith Soft had been around for a lot longer, which is obviously true, as even my first experience with them as a main studio was on Xenosaga and Baten Kaitos. But even then, for me, yes, Baten Kaitos was amazing. I own that game and I wouldn't hate on that game at all. I absolutely love it. But truly for me, Monolith Soft grabbed my attention by their name with Xenoblade Chronicles. A game which for me, from that point on, replaced Golden Sun. Well, I've always said Golden Sun is a series that could have been Nintendo's Final Fantasy. But since then, I've rated Xenoblade's series over Golden Sun and the latest Final Fantasy games. No contest in my mind. But what's more important in this video, and the main focus really, is how Monolith Soft outside of Xenoblade have woven themselves deep into the house of Nintendo and have assisted them with a wealth of games, way more than anything, for as far as I know, than Retro Studios have been involved with. Games like Smash Bros. Brawl, which I know they assisted with, The Legend of Zelda, Skyward Sword, which is funny because I remember Miyamoto quoting that he'd like to work with Retro Studios on a Zelda title, but that never happened to my knowledge, and we all know that Zelda is a gold standard for Nintendo. They also assisted with Pikmin 3, Splatoon 1 and 2, some 3DS titles like The Legend of Zelda, Link Between Worlds, which is a crazy, awesome game, by the way, and once again another Zelda title. And they even gave a hand on Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer. But one game that we all know they had a major hand in, and one we see elements of Xenoblade Chronicles X in, is none other than the greatest video game ever made, in my opinion, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And we have to wonder, without the assistance of Monolith Soft, would Breath of the Wild have been as open and as big as it is? But that's just all speculation, and we've seen Nintendo create large open areas in Zelda games before, especially with the likes of The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, with only the Nintendo GameCube hardware prevented them from adding more islands within the Great Sea. But what I'm seeing from Monolith Soft and Nintendo are them especially growing together in order to create new IPs and assist on taking established ones to the next level. Something that was once felt with Retro Studios, but has quietened down now based off current knowledge and observation. Ignoring for the moment Metroid Prime 4, which is still on the horizon, and I'll touch upon that briefly towards the end. Looking at Monolith Soft's website, you see them recruiting for not only the next megaton of a Zelda title, which we now presume to be Breath of the Wild 2, although if it's not, I'll get into that in a moment. Not only are they recruiting for their next new IP, which has been teased with concept art for a while now, but they're clearly still working hard on it. But also they're looking for help on the next Xenoblade game, whether that's a brand new entry in the series, hopefully maybe a sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles X, or perhaps it's a remake of the original Xenoblade Chronicles, which if it does appear in HD, I think you'll all be reminded as to why that's the best game in the series, in my opinion, and also one of the best JRPGs ever made. I mean, that's crazy right there. 3 titles on the go, never mind if they're also assisting with other titles in development, because Monolith Soft continues to keep growing as a studio, recently opening new offices and looking for more staff with no hint of them slowing down. Nintendo, it seems, has returned to Japan for their development backup in regards to them establishing new IPs as well as working on existing ones, something you also see them doing with Platinum Games as another example. So what's the only thing I'm waiting for here from Monolith Soft and Nintendo? From Monolith Soft, an existing Nintendo IP, completely for the most part developed by Monolith Soft, pitching their own ideas. And do you know what series I'd love for Monolith Soft to put their full RPG stamp on? Because that's what we know them mostly for, is creating great RPGs. I'd like to see a full RPG spin-off to The Legend of Zelda. And when I mean full RPG, I'm talking action, turn-based combat, perhaps similar to Xenoblade, a full epic story, but this time set in a completely different setting, drastically different to what we're used to with the Zelda series. Perhaps even going full-on futuristic like Xenoblade Chronicles X, or preferably, for me, full-on steampunk similar to, say, Final Fantasy VII. And I wouldn't have any issues if this game was even a top-down Zelda title or pre-rendered backgrounds like Baton Kaitos or anything like that. I would just love to see Monolith Soft put an RPG stamp on the Legend of Zelda series, as I think this would make them shine. If an indie studio can turn Zelda into a rhythm game, or another studio can turn Zelda into a hack and slash, then Monolith Soft can make a Zelda steampunk RPG. Monolith Soft are quickly, if not already, one of the most integral and exciting studios under the umbrella of Nintendo, and I think their potential could be endless as they've built up a wealth of skills and experience from their days before Nintendo and to their days with Nintendo, where they've worked on a large number of different genres and Nintendo IPs already. Something Retro Studios began to offer, but have seemingly slowed down on, both development-wise and influence-wise, in terms of helping Nintendo development-wise. But Retro Studios aren't out for the count just yet. What they've been working on since Tropical Freeze, we don't know, and it could still appear. But what we do know is that they are now working on Metroid Prime 4. the one and possibly only studio qualified to tackle the Prime series, and Metroid Prime 4 could once again show why retro studios are also an integral part to Nintendo, a studio that can elevate their established IPs into current gen greatness, as well as assist Nintendo in other projects in the background. But these are my quick thoughts on how I feel the shift in focus has changed between Monolith Soft and Retro Studios as they work together to deliver, that Nintendo greatness we all love. But what are your thoughts? Both studios have delivered incredible games and have and still work with Nintendo to deliver incredible games. But do you feel like me that Nintendo have put more of their attention and focus into Monolith Soft now over Retro Studios, calling on Monolith Soft for more projects? Does it even matter in the end? I could still argue that Metroid Prime is still a better game than anything Monolith Soft has created on Nintendo platforms. But that doesn't matter really, as both studios, I still think we can all agree, have created exceptional titles, and I'd like to keep the focus on which studio has become more integral to Nintendo and their continued developments. But as always, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to say this now because I don't normally say it. Give it a like, give it a subscribe if you like it. And as always, thanks for listening. Take care all, and peace.